At 32, Chloe Jacobs had just been promoted to senior financial analyst at Lexington Partners, a Chicago-based investment firm. After more than 6 years of relentless work, 60-hour weeks, holidays spent with spreadsheets, and volunteering for every dreaded task, she was finally recognized. Along with the title came a $12,800 bonus. For many, that number would be exciting. For Chloe, it meant something deeper: freedom. She had long dreamed of owning a space she could call her own, not a rented apartment or a cramped sublet, but a quiet home that was hers. The bonus was the final puzzle piece for the down payment on a modest condo in the city's north side, close to her favorite park and a local coffee shop where she liked to write in her journal on weekends. When the promotion announcement went out to the company, her coworkers responded with warm congratulations. But when the news reached her family in Indiana, it triggered something else, a familiar chain reaction of cheerful praise and subtle expectation. Her mother Lorraine called that very day. "Chloe, I heard the news, your promotion. That's incredible. We should have a little family dinner, just us." Her voice was sweet, but Chloe heard the old undercurrent. "You're doing well, so you can help, right?" Growing up in the Lawrence household meant learning early that money was a mystery. Her parents, Lorraine and Stanley, believed it would somehow show up and often spent it before it did. At 12, Chloe was already checking their bank balances, noting which bills were overdue, and even calling the electric company to ask for extensions. They jokingly called her the little accountant, but the stress was no joke. While other kids saved for concert tickets or new clothes, Chloe stashed her babysitting money in a shoebox. Not for fun or splurging, but because she knew someone would eventually need to borrow. And when they did, they always followed it with the phrase, "Family helps family," right? But in their world, help only flowed one way. When Chloe earned a full-ride scholarship to the University of Wisconsin-Madison, she was careful to keep every financial account in her own name. She worked in the campus library, tutored economics, and delivered takeout on weekends, anything to avoid depending on anyone. Her first job at Lexington may not have been glamorous, but it was hers. The small apartment she rented 20 miles from her parents' home became her sanctuary, just far enough to breathe, but close enough that her mom still expected her to come over with groceries every time the fridge ran low. For 6 years, Chloe gave everything to her career. No vacations, no luxury purchases. Just steady building of savings, of self-worth, of boundaries. She was learning to say no. Even when her mother sighed over the phone, "Not all of us are lucky like you. Some people choose family over bank accounts." The word stung because Chloe had never chosen money over love. But to her family, her success was theirs to share by default. Chloe Jacobs didn't grow up with memories of backyard games or cheerful family road trips. Her childhood memories were laced with overdraft notices, whispered phone calls to utility companies, and the sound of her parents counting loose change at the kitchen table. In her house, money was always missing, and the solution more often than not was to borrow from Chloe. When Chloe was 15, she had spent an entire summer working at the local ice cream shop, saving up $300 for a long-anticipated school camping trip. The night before the payment was due, she opened the wooden box hidden under her bed, her trusted hiding place, and found it empty. Every last dollar gone. "You don't need to make such a fuss," her mother said calmly when confronted. "I used it for the new sofa deposit." The living room looked embarrassing with guests over. Chloe stood frozen. That sofa wasn't an emergency, but in their household, anything her parents wanted was instantly labeled as for the good of the family. From that moment on, Chloe stopped hiding money at home. She opened her own bank account, but even that wasn't safe for long. Her mother casually asked for the login, claiming it would be easier to help her manage. Chloe refused and endured a full week of silent treatment in return. But more than the loss of money, it was the loss of trust that stung the most. Every time Chloe's savings disappeared under the guise of family needs, she didn't just lose dollars, she lost belief in her place in the family as a person, not a provider. She remembered the year her father used her birthday money, $150 sent from Aunt Clara, to pay for a car repair. "You don't need it right now," he reasoned. "I need my car for work. Everyone's needs matter, Chloe." But no one had ever asked what mattered to Chloe. Over time, her voice faded. She stopped asking questions. She worked more, saved harder, and said less because speaking up got her labeled as selfish. In her family, being smart about money made you cold. Giving without question made you loving. At 18, Chloe left home burning with a quiet vow she would never allow herself to be in that position again. But trauma doesn't pack itself neatly away. Even as she moved to a new city, found a stable job, and settled into her own apartment, the emotional residue clung to her. It was during therapy sessions with Dr. Madeline Hart, whom Chloe started seeing after a mild panic attack at work, that she uncovered a hard truth she had never learned: to tell the difference between authentic generosity and coerced obligation. Her boundaries had been erased early in life, and reclaiming them now felt like waging a war. When Chloe's mother called to invite her to what she described as a small family dinner to celebrate her recent promotion, Chloe hesitated. But then Lorraine spoke with a tone Chloe hadn't heard in years, soft, almost sincere. "Just your dad, Rachel, and Matt, and maybe Aunt Maggie since she's in town. Nothing fancy, just our way of saying we're proud of you." It softened Chloe's guard. She'd been working for years to set boundaries: no more surprise grocery deliveries every time her mother hinted the fridge was empty, no more automatic transfers when someone mentioned a bill. She'd even said no recently when her sister Rachel texted asking to borrow a few hundred for the nursery. Maybe this time was different, Chloe thought. Maybe they were finally learning to respect her as a person, not a paycheck. So she prepared thoughtfully. She picked out a modest but elegant dress, bought an affordable bottle of champagne, and wrapped a small baby gift. Driving from Chicago to her parents' suburban Indiana home, she allowed herself to feel hope for something simple and sincere. But as she turned onto their familiar street, unease crept in. Both sides of the road were packed with parked cars. Chloe had to park several blocks away. She checked her messages again Saturday, 6:30 p.m. Our house. It was the right time and place. As she approached, music and chatter floated from the backyard. The garage was open, revealing towers of pink and blue gifts, streamers, and party supplies. A glittery backdrop read, "Welcome, baby Ava." Her mother opened the front door with an unusually wide smile. "Chloe, everyone's been asking where you are," she chirped, pulling Chloe into a perfumed hug, something she hadn't done since Chloe established physical boundaries last Christmas. "What's going on?" Chloe asked calmly. "I thought this was just dinner." "Oh, don't be so uptight," Lorraine laughed, looping her arm through Chloe's. "It's just a little celebration." When the patio doors opened, Chloe froze. The backyard had been transformed into a full-blown luxury event, rows of white chairs facing a flower-adorned arch, a buffet with food from a high-end Italian restaurant, a professional photo station with custom props, and monogrammed napkins that read, "Ava Chloe." It looked like a wedding reception. "Surprise? It's Rachel's baby shower," Lorraine beamed, "and she's naming the baby after you. Ava Chloe, your namesake." That's when it hit Chloe. This wasn't a dinner to honor her achievement. It was a lavish event celebrating someone else, funded by her bonus. Everyone believed Chloe had generously sponsored it. But the truth was, chilling, her parents had accessed an old joint account she had forgotten to close from her college days and drained the entire $12,800 bonus. Every compliment, every thank you, every glass raised in her honor was built on a lie. Chloe stood in the middle of the crowded backyard, surrounded by laughter, clinking glasses, and fairy lights twinkling above her tangled thoughts. Everyone was smiling. Everyone was celebrating. And everyone believed she was the reason this magical event existed. She nodded politely as guests called her so generous, forced a smile when someone thanked her for this beautiful party. Inside she was crumbling, but on the surface the smile remained. Not because she was okay, but because she had learned to look okay, even when everything inside her was breaking. Each step through the party chipped away at her sense of self. Aunt Maggie took her arm and whispered, "You're the perfect big sister. Not everyone would do this for their family." A distant cousin laughed. "Good thing Chloe doesn't have a husband or kids. She's got extra cash to throw around." That one stung. Chloe laughed politely, but the words echoed inside her. "So because I don't have a family of my own, I must fund everyone else's." Under the glow of string lights, every detail was a physical reminder of the betrayal: the custom-printed napkins, the photo backdrop, the live music in the corner, the bartender serving signature drinks named after family members. Chloe didn't need to ask how much any of it cost. She knew. She worked in finance. But never had she imagined her hard-earned bonus would be used to build a fantasy funded by deceit. Now and then she caught Matt, Rachel's husband, looking at her with guilt flickering in his eyes. He knew. But each time Rachel called him for a photo, he turned away. Chloe didn't blame Rachel. Her sister looked radiant in her maternity dress, glowing and oblivious. She probably had no idea. And somehow that made it worse. No one, not a single person, had defended Chloe. Everyone had accepted her financial sacrifice as natural. After an hour of playing the role of the generous sister, Chloe pulled her mother aside near the edge of the lawn. Her voice was calm, but her eyes no longer hid the truth. "What exactly have you been telling people?" she asked. Lorraine took a sip of wine, then smiled airily. "I just told them you wanted to do something special for Rachel. Not technically a lie. I never agreed to any of this," Chloe said, her voice shaking. "You would have," her mother replied, tone sweet but sharp. "You always do. You're the one with money." That moment something clicked. Chloe realized her silence had always been taken as consent. As the garden lights dimmed and the music faded, Chloe quietly slipped out the side door. No one noticed. Everyone was still laughing, toasting to Rachel and the baby on the way, while Chloe, who had unknowingly funded the entire celebration with her career bonus, walked away invisible. She sat in her car for nearly 10 minutes, unable to start the engine. Her hands shook. Her chest ached. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the erasure of her voice, her consent, her identity. To them, she wasn't Chloe, the woman who'd worked hard for years. She was just the financier. They didn't apologize. They didn't even ask. They just assumed. Because Chloe had always been the one who could handle it. When she finally pulled herself together enough to drive, she didn't head home. Instead, she drove to Harrison Lake Park, a quiet place where she often went to think. The night air was still, the water like glass. She sat on a bench and watched her reflection blur with memories she'd tried to bury. The time her mother used scholarship funds to pay the gas bill. The birthday check her father spent fixing the fridge. Every time she'd whispered, "It's okay, I'll earn it back." But this time was different. $12,800 wasn't just money. It was recognition. It was weekends lost to overtime, late dinners at her desk, a rare compliment from her boss: "You saved the entire client portfolio." And now it had been spent on confetti pastries and a cake bearing someone else's name. Chloe sat under the stars, and a slow simmering anger began to rise. Not explosive, resolute. The kind that grows in people who've stayed quiet too long. She realized that if she didn't act now, this wouldn't stop. The party was just the start. Next would come nursery renovations, then a family vacation, then donations in her name, all based on earnings she hadn't even made yet. She couldn't allow that to continue. Near midnight, Chloe returned to her apartment. It no longer felt like a temporary place. Tonight, it became a war room. She turned on the lights, opened her laptop, and got to work. She listed every account, bank, credit cards, automatic transfers, the old joint account from college, the trap she'd forgotten about. She pulled up her most recent statement. 15 charges, total $12,800, all withdrawn over 3 days. She took screenshots, saved documents, and created a folder labeled Reclaiming What's Mine. There was no panic now, only focus. Tomorrow she'd call the bank, close any account her parents could access, change passwords, cancel every transfer she once set up out of guilt. And most importantly, she wouldn't warn them, because for the first time in years, Chloe was choosing herself first. The next morning, Chloe woke up earlier than usual. She didn't need an alarm clock. Her alertness wasn't fueled by caffeine, it was powered by something sharper: resolve. The kind of clarity that comes after a lifetime of being taken for granted. She sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and reviewed the plan she'd laid out the night before. Each task was simple and deliberate. Close the old account. Remove parental access. Report unauthorized activity. Reclaim control. Her first call was to the bank. The representative, Simone, listened patiently as Chloe explained the situation in firm, unwavering tones. "I need to be very clear," Chloe said. "I did not authorize those transactions. I never consented to the use of that money. This was a violation." Simone confirmed that although her parents had once been listed as co-users, using the account without permission for personal spending qualified for a fraud investigation. She asked for supporting documents and Chloe was ready. Screenshot statements, timestamps, annotations, everything organized and labeled. "We'll issue a provisional credit while we investigate," Simone assured her, "and we'll remove their access today." Chloe ended the call and moved to the next step. She opened a new account at a separate bank, transferred the refunded funds, locked the old debit cards, updated passwords, and enabled two-factor authentication across all her financial platforms. Every action felt like bolting shut a door that had been open far too long. But what took her breath away was rediscovering a long-buried fact. 3 years ago, during a financial crisis, she had agreed to co-sign her parents' mortgage to help them refinance. At the time, she thought she was offering support. Now that detail had become her leverage. She called Rachel Simmons, a college friend now working in property law. "I'm not trying to evict them," Chloe said, "but they need to understand that this can't continue. I'm not a bottomless ATM." Rachel agreed to draft a partition notice, a legal move that could force the sale of jointly owned property if no agreement was reached. "You don't even need to file," Rachel said. "Just having the document ready might be enough to make them realize you're serious." That afternoon, Chloe received confirmation from her bank the $12,800 was back in her account, and her parents were officially removed from all access. For the first time in years, she felt a door had finally shut on the past. By evening, the phone began to buzz nonstop. Messages from her mother, her father, her sister Rachel, shifting in tone from concern to accusation. From "Are you okay, sweetie?" to "I can't believe you do this to your family." But this time Chloe didn't respond, because she finally understood this wasn't family drama. This was her reclaiming ownership of her life. The first text came at 7:08 a.m. from her mother. "Something's wrong with the bank account. Call me immediately." Within 10 minutes, her phone was ringing nonstop. First her mom, then her dad, then Aunt Maggie. Chloe flipped the phone face down and returned to her work. She no longer felt pulled into their panic. This time, she was in control. Another message from her father followed. "Enough with this childish behavior. Your mother is panicking. The vendors haven't been paid." And then, "This isn't how a well-educated daughter treats her family." The shift in tone from concern to accusation took only a few hours, but for the first time, Chloe didn't feel the need to respond. By noon, the storm had widened. The flying monkeys arrived, relatives and family friends enlisted to guilt her into compliance. Aunt Patty left a 4-minute voicemail repeating no less than 5 times, "Family is still family no matter what." Uncle Walter half-slurred accused Chloe of destroying family traditions over a few bucks. Rachel's message, her younger sister, was different. Short. Confused. Mom said something about a bank thing and the house. "Are you okay?" Chloe didn't respond right away. She needed time to ensure every loose end was tied, every access point closed, every vulnerable spot secured. She wasn't just defending money. She was defending peace of mind. By mid-afternoon, the partition notice prepared by Rachel Simmons had been officially served. The impact was immediate. Within the hour, her father called 3 times, texted 6 more, and left a voicemail that was nearly unintelligible through the rage. "Are you trying to make your mother homeless?" Chloe knew the truth. She didn't want the house. She didn't even want control. She wanted acknowledgement that her generosity wasn't default, that it wasn't owed. Rachel called at 5:47 p.m. Her voice trembled. "I don't know what's going on, but Mom's been crying nonstop. Dad says you're forcing them to sell the house. Is that true?" Chloe inhaled deeply. "No, but I need them to understand they can't keep taking from me without asking. They spent my entire $12,800 bonus without a word." Silence. Then Rachel whispered, "I didn't know. I honestly thought you offered." It wasn't a dramatic apology, but it was something, a crack in the wall. A sign that someone was starting to see things clearly. Elm & Oak Cafe sat quietly at the corner of a sunlit street, its late afternoon glow streaming through the windows and glinting off porcelain cups. Chloe arrived 15 minutes early. She chose a table near the window, her back against the wall, and placed her leather folder in front of her like armor. This wasn't her first conversation with her parents about money, but it was the first time she'd be the one in control. At exactly 3:00 p.m., Stanley and Lorraine walked in. Her mother's makeup was smudged beneath her eyes, and her father wore his usual look of restrained irritation, but beneath it was something new, uncertainty. "Chloe," her mother began, not even seated yet. "How could you do this to your own family?" "Let's all sit down and have a calm conversation," Chloe replied evenly. They sat reluctantly. Chloe opened her folder and pulled out the documents. Not as a threat, but as a clear presentation of facts. "These are detailed records of 15 transactions from the old joint account. The total is $12,800, exactly the amount of my work bonus." She slid the papers across the table. "None of these were approved by me." "We had access to that account," her father snapped. "We opened it together when you were in college." "Access doesn't mean permission to spend someone else's money," Chloe answered, her voice steady. "And the account is under my name." Her mother's eyes welled up. "We just wanted to do something nice for Rachel. She's your sister Chloe. How could you be so cold?" "No one talked to me. No one asked. You used my money as if it belonged to you. And then you made promises to the rest of the family that I'd pay for the nursery, the vacation, even a scholarship fund. That's not support. That's exploitation." Silence fell, broken only by the quiet hum of the espresso machine in the background. Then Chloe moved to the next point. "I've filed a partition action on the house. I'm not trying to take anything from you, but if we can't reach an agreement, it will proceed." For the first time, her father didn't respond with anger. He was quiet. Then he asked, "What do you want?" Chloe took a breath and spoke clearly. 4 things. 1. Acknowledge that what happened was wrong. 2. A structured repayment plan, even small monthly amounts. 3A. Signed agreement on financial boundaries. 4A. Commitment to attend 6 family therapy sessions. "We can't afford to pay you back," her mother cried. "We're retired. But you could afford a photographer-printed napkins high-end catering, Chloe replied. It's not about ability, it's about priority. Eventually, the resistance wore down. Chloe never raised her voice. She never cried. And that calm dismantled every emotional tactic they had relied on for years. By the end, they agreed. They signed the agreement Chloe had prepared. A formal written contract. No assumptions, no loopholes. As she stood to leave, Chloe didn't feel victorious. She just felt free for the first time in years. The weeks following the coffee shop conversation passed slowly, as if Chloe's life was learning how to breathe again. No more sleepless nights, wondering who would ask for money next. No more guilt for saying no to family favors. In its place, a quiet kind of peace settled in, the kind that only comes when boundaries are finally respected. Of course, not everything was smooth. Her mother Lorraine alternated between weeks of silence and passive-aggressive messages like, "I never asked for anything back when I helped with your college." Even though Chloe had paid for every cent of her education herself. Her father Stanley stuck to cold transactional updates. This month's transfer has been sent. No apologies, no warmth, just obligation. But in the cracks of that discomfort, something new began to grow. Rachel, Chloe's younger sister, was the first to reach out. She invited Chloe to lunch, just the two of them, for the first time in years. All this time, Rachel said, stirring her coffee, "I thought you liked being the responsible one. I assumed you had more, so it made sense that you'd help more." Chloe smiled. "I used to think that too." "I was wrong," Rachel said, "and I'm sorry." That conversation didn't erase all the damage, but it opened a door, a new, honest way of relating. One without assumptions or avoidance. Family therapy. The fourth condition in Chloe's agreement began with tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Her parents arrived to the first session defensive, as if walking into a courtroom. But the therapist, Dr. Keller, didn't allow old patterns to dominate. "This isn't about who sacrificed more," he said. "It's about consent, about boundaries that were crossed repeatedly and without repair." Each session was a small step. Some led to breakthroughs, others to friction. But after the third visit, Lorraine admitted, "I assumed, because you were strong, you didn't need support." And Stanley for once nodded in agreement. "We shouldn't have assumed you'd always carry the weight." For Chloe, it wasn't total reconciliation. But it was a beginning not of forgiveness to forget, but of rebuilding with intention and limits. Perhaps the most profound shift came from within Chloe herself. Through continued individual therapy, she came to recognize how deeply she had internalized the role of the responsible daughter, the one who had to make everything okay, even when she wasn't okay. Now she was learning to give from love, not obligation. Learning to say no without guilt, and most importantly, learning how to exist without being the emotional backbone of a family system that had always leaned too heavily on her. 1 year after that fateful family dinner, Chloe's life had changed, not in some grand dramatic way, but through quiet, lasting transformation. She had purchased her first home, not a sleek downtown loft like some of her colleagues, but a modest 2-bedroom condo in a peaceful suburb. It had a small balcony bathed in morning sun and a cozy reading nook that overlooked the park. The second room, she didn't call it a guest room. She called it her freedom room, her space to work, write, and simply exist without expectations. The $12 $800 bonus, once taken without her consent, had been gradually returned in small monthly installments as agreed. Her parents sent the payments on time. Chloe didn't see this as redemption, but as evidence that boundaries had been drawn, and this time they were being respected. Her relationship with her family hadn't returned to what it once was, but it also wasn't a battlefield anymore. Family meals were now smaller, more grounded, and every invitation began with, "Only if you're comfortable." Her mother, during a quiet evening phone call, once said, "I've been reading about boundaries. I don't understand everything yet, but I'm trying. To Chloe, that didn't erase the past, but it was a real effort for the first time. She also learned to give in a healthier way. She created a small fund called Give Because I Want To, where she donated monthly to charities and occasionally helped friends in need, not out of guilt or obligation, but because she genuinely wanted to. But perhaps the most significant shift wasn't in her bank accounts. It was in her sense of agency. For the first time in years, she didn't live under the pressure of carrying everyone else. She was no longer the family ATM, no longer the default source of silent support or unspoken sacrifice. She was Chloe, a whole, complete person. Not because she gave everything away, but because she finally learned how to keep something for herself.